I want to turn in your Bibles to Revelation 13. And this is a very important chapter in Revelation. In fact, this is the key. Chapter 13 is really the key to the whole book of Revelation, which is interesting. We're going to cover a little bit today because it talks about two terrible rulers, the Antichrist and the false prophet. And we're going to look at these two fellows, one of them today and one of them next Sunday. But the Antichrist today. And the Antichrist is going to be helped by this other person, the false religious leader, in order to maintain and control upon the earth. And they're going to work together to bring this together. It's going to be one of the most terrorizing times possible. It's not even ever been happening before. We think about the Holocaust. We think about things that have happened in our own nation and in the past and different things that have happened. And it's not even going to be really comparable, really, to what is going to be taking place during that tribulation time. And so we need to understand that because millions are going to be slaughtered just all over the world, in nation after nation. Anyone that doesn't take the mark of the beast will be killed. Anybody that doesn't swear allegiance to the Antichrist will be killed. And a few will escape, but many millions will actually be being killed. And Jews right along with them. And so we see that. And so we read this passage of Scripture. We're going to read the first 10 verses this morning. But starting with verse 1 of chapter 13, Revelation 13:1. It says, "Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, 'Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?' And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. He was given authority to continue for 42 months, 3.5 years, and then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, every tongue, and every nation. And all who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. If anyone has an ear to hear, let him hear. If he who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." Wow. We realize there's an origin of this beast, and it just talks about here. It says in verse 1, it says, "I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea." The sea in Revelation 17:15 is really talking about, it talks about the waters, it's talking about people, nations, multitudes, tongues. It's talking about him, the Antichrist, rising up out of the nations, he's a person, he's rising up amongst the people, and he comes into a position of great power. And so we see all of these things, the world at that time being in absolute chaos. We recognize that the rapture has taken place. We realize that there's a tremendous confusion when that takes place. We realize that the world is in great confusion. We realize there's a lot of things happening. There's lots of wars, rumors of wars, famines, pestilences, all kinds of things are absolutely taking place. And the world is looking for someone that's going to bring order to the situation. They're hoping something would happen that would cause people to be able to have hope again in their life, because they're just almost like without hope. They're desolate, desperate, destitute, spelled the same. And so we just see a lot of things happening here that are just causing people just to go looking for some kind of a hope. And the Antichrist rises up, and he's an amazing person, to be honest with you. He's an amazing person, filled with Satan, filled and empowered by Satan, but he's called the beast, and but he has tremendous political power. And what we realize is this great political power that he has is an amazing power. He says he saw the beast that was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear. His mouth was like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. And we see all of these things happening. What we don't realize sometimes is we think, again, the devil, looked like carrying a pitchfork, having a long tail, and some horns coming out of his head or something. And we look at that and we think, wow, he's a red guy. And so we think, well, this must be what he's like, but he's not like that in any perspective whatsoever. He's powerful. He has enormous ability. He actually is almost like a supernatural genius. He is a person that possesses complete knowledge from a human perspective and ability from a human perspective. He's going to be able to think. He's going to be able to plan. He's going to be able to act. He's going to be able to respond. He's going to be able to do things quicker than any other man has actually done. And being very much efficient in what he has done, but he's able to manipulate people, powerful manipulation of his power, like no one else before him. And we have to ask the question, how come he's like that? It's because he's demon-possessed. He's empowered by Satan in an amazing way. And then it says that he's going to have the 7 heads. And 7 heads is literally meaning he is complete and full. 7 is always a number in the Bible referring to being complete, being full, and all of those things. And so then he's going to have 10 horns. And we realize that 10 horns are representing power. There's power in the talking about horns. And so the number of horns, 10 of them that he has. And so he is a representative and an embodiment actually of Satan himself. And so the horns mean power, but Satan has given his authority to the Antichrist, to this person, exactly the same way that he offered the kingdom to Jesus Christ in his temptations in the wilderness. And he says, if you would just bow down to me, I would give you the kingdoms of this world. And of course, Jesus didn't choose to do that. He chose to go to the cross. But this is what the Antichrist does. The Antichrist is really a person that is excited about self-focuses. He's excited about power. He's excited about authority. He's excited about control. He's excited about all these things, and he chases after these things. And when the Antichrist, or when the Satan offers him basically the world, he is excited to grab a hold of it. He's filled with satanic power, and he is a person that is very, very powerful, very, very influential, brings tremendous destruction upon this earth and the people that are living on this earth. Amazing, amazing as to what he is doing. He also has 10 blasphemous names on his head, and he's going to be the very fulfillment and the embodiment of blasphemy. He's going to be a person that blasphemes the Lord. He has an ability to explain away the rapture. He has an ability to explain away everything that would be negative towards his position of absolute authority in life, in this world. And so he's able to explain things and bring about his purposeful, destructive focuses that he has designed as he has designed himself to be the leader of the power of the world. And so he becomes also the abomination of desolation as he sets himself. He builds an image later, but he sets himself up. He walks into the temple to be worshipped. And this is where Matthew 24:15, Jesus warns about this. He says, when you see the abomination of desolation coming into the holy place, the Holy of Holies, he says, and he's talking to Israel, to the nation of Israel. He says, it's time to pack up and not pack up, get out. Don't even pack up, just get out, run. And those people that run they run and are actually saved by God as they are running to the rock city of Petra, they are not going to be a lot of people, probably just a few maybe, but the ones that run and obey what they know they're supposed to be doing, they run, they get out of there, and they're the ones that the Lord actually saves. And of course, the 144,000 are also saved. And so, as he sets himself up to be worshipped, of course, his purpose in that focus is that he would bring unity back into all of these nations that are all over the world, bring them back into a position of unity, and he does it by the worship of the state. Worship of him and worship of the state. So he sets up this image to be worshipped. He himself walks into the Holy of Holies himself and desecrates the temple, and then demands that they would worship him. Then, of course, the mark of the beast comes, the swearing of worship to the Antichrist, the conformity to the state. All of these things are going to be taking place. And so he is the man of sin that is in opposition to every single thing that God would that would be called godly in every perspective. And so he's calling out for himself to be worshipped. 2 Thessalonians 2:4 just lays it out real clear. It says, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. He thinks he is God. Well, that's an amazing thing. And then what we realize also in that verse number 2, he just says here in verse 2, he says, now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, his mouth was like the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power, his authority, and his throne and great authority. And so we see him basically talks about the leopard, the lion, and the bear, and we see that very same focus, that very same picture that was given to Daniel, as we would turn back over to Daniel chapter 7. We see this very same picture given to Daniel, and in actually just the turned around direction, but it's actually this very same vision that's given to Daniel. And so we see his power as he comes and he begins to combine all of the aspects of all of actually these four kingdoms that actually became world powers at that time. At least the closest thing that we can imagine to world power. He takes all of the characteristics of those four kingdoms and he becomes involved in, he brings all of those characteristics into his rule and reign as he becomes a world ruler. So if you want to turn over to Daniel 7, chapter 7, and we want to start with verse 3, Daniel 7, verse 3. It says, and the four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, and I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And what we realize in this whole representation, this is representing the Babylonian Empire. It's represented by the head of gold in the vision, and it's also representative that Nebuchadnezzar was put into a position for 7 years of humility because he would not humble himself. He was so proud of everything that he had done. Everything was tied to how he built the kingdom, how he built the empire, and he was walking around. He was warned a year before his demise came about that he needed to humble himself, and he refused to humble himself, and he walked around that year later and just said, look at this Babylon that I have built, and he just focuses totally upon who he is and his greatness, and thinking that he had accomplished everything. And of course he became an animal and went out and fed in the grass and all that stuff. And so what it's talking about here, it says the first was like a lion, it had eagle's wings. I watched till his wings were plucked off, and that's what happened with Nebuchadnezzar. He got sentenced to 7 years, basically 7 years, until he acknowledged God for who he really was. And when he did that, he was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to him again, and he returned back and received his kingdom back again. And so we see that. And then suddenly another beast, a second beast, like a bear, it was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and they said thus to it, arise, devour much flesh. And if you probably won't remember this, but as we talked about through Daniel quite a while back, we talked about the different kingdoms that were conquered, the 3 kingdoms that were conquered by the Medo-Persian Empire, and that was the silver breast or chest of that image that we saw there, the Medo-Persian Empire. And of course, those 3 ribs that were taken out of his mouth was Lydia, which they conquered in 546 BC. Babylon they conquered in 530 BC. And then Egypt they conquered in 525 BC. So those 3 things they conquered, and that's what it's talking about here in those ribs. And so as we look at that, we need to look at the characteristics. First of all, the characteristics of Babylon were basically a lion roars. and I don't know how many of you have heard a lion roaring, but if you're close to a lion, and if you're in the dark and you don't see the lion and he roars, I can assure you that the hair on the back of your neck, if you don't have any, it's going to come. It's going to stand straight up because it's a fearful sound. When they roar, they are loud. And if you're right by them on mine, it's unbelievable. So what he's talking about here is the Antichrist is going to be full of blasphemy. He's going to be striking fear into the nations as he speaks and as he blasphemes God. And of course, those that refuse to take the mark of the beast are put in tremendous fear and dread of what he's going to be doing to them. Sharp teeth. He has sharp teeth, and that teeth, of course, are made for tearing. They're made for chewing. They're made for eating. And he's talking about here the fact that they're going to be conquering nations and eating up, basically, and tearing apart the people of the world. When it comes to the Medo-Persian Empire of the bear, it says it's the second empire that became basically a world empire at that time, and it talks about these tough feet that he had. What he's saying is that it can conquer large areas, and it will continue to pursue until it has overcome. And so the feet. And then, of course, the strong claws are talking about gripping people, gripping the prey of nations, gripping nations, grabbing hold of nations, bringing them into a position of loyalty to them, and not letting them go. And then also with the ability, if they in any resistance whatsoever, to rip those people apart, rip the nations apart, rip the people apart that refuse to take the mark of the beast and worship the image. And then the next one was the leopard. The leopard was represented by bronze, and of course it was the Grecian Empire that we're talking about here, the Third World Empire, and its characteristics was like a leopard. Well, a leopard has a beautiful, sleek body, very attractive, and we realize that as the as the Antichrist came in, it came in with beauty. It came in with a lot of sweet talk, deceit, ability to incorporate a lot of what do you call it? Influence that would be intriguing into the life of the people as he was taking over and taking the power over. And so the nature of his in the beginning was very appropriate, very kind, very gentle, very in a sense very strong and authoritative, and leading people into a position to where he was deceiving, and they were led into deceptions, into not recognizing who he really was at that point. So he's sleek, he's beautiful, he's also full of spots. And you think, what do those spots represent? The spots represent he was full of evil, he was full of deceit, he was sneaky, he was ferocious, he was very wild in his nature. And so we're looking at all these characteristics now, and then we come to the Fourth Empire, and that Fourth Empire was a representation of Rome, iron, and it was mixed with clay, which obviously was indicating that the Roman Empire wasn't going to last for, it was going to last for quite a while, but it was going to be falling apart because iron and clay do not mix. But the iron part of that was going to be put into into the Antichrist rule and reign and the characteristics of his rule and reign. And Daniel 7:7 describes it. It says, "After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth, and it devoured and broke in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the other beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns." And so we recognize that when the Antichrist rises up in verse 1 of Revelation 13, he would be as a terrible beast of Rome. And Rome, of course, was a powerful, powerful nation, and it basically conquered everything, and then it was conquered by itself from within, from the deterioration of the morals and all the other standards as they adopted the Greeks to come in and to teach their kids, and all of this within one generation. That Rome, which was established in the very beginning as kind of a righteous, fairly righteous nation, not righteous in God's eyes, but it had character, it had focuses that were good. And when they hired the Greeks to come in and teach their children, then they adopted the Greeks' ways, which was immorality, which was homosexuality, which was all of these other things. And they began to set up the gyms, which are homosexual focuses. And all that began to take place, and they infiltrated the Roman Empire within one but within one generation. I think that tells us something about our own situation, about teaching our kids. I think we need to understand that those that teach our kids, those that are influencing the young people today, look at the universities, look at what is happening all across America today, and look at the curriculums being taught in the schools, look at the curriculums happening all over the place, and of course in the universities, just terrible focus is absolutely taking place. But the heart of the kids, the heart of young people, the heart of children is being stolen by those that teach them. And we need to understand that, and that's exactly what happened with the Roman Empire. And the very thing is happening right here in America today. Very, 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 very serious, a very serious time. And so Satan is going to take the characteristics, all of these characteristics that are not good characteristics of all these empires that were empires, and the negative part of these characteristics is what he is implementing into his reign as he reigns for those 7 years of tribulation here upon this earth. And that's in the future. And we need to be aware of what is going to be taking place, so we can warn people. People need to give their lives to the Lord. If people do not know the Lord, if you are here today, and I think probably most of us know the Lord today, but if you do not know the Lord, and you think, well, I'll just go ahead and experience the tribulation, then I'll turn to the Lord in the tribulation, well, good luck, because there's going to be a great delusion that's going to happen. There will be many, many millions of people that will actually be turned to the Lord as they have recognized what they missed, and they will be turned to the Lord. But and then they will be killed for that relationship with the Lord. So then we have to realize that there is a very dramatic rise of power that was given to the Antichrist by the Antichrist. And so we recognize in that back in Revelation 13 that verses 3 and 4, that he comes to power. And there's a couple of things that brings him to power. In verse 2, the end of verse 2, it says, the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and his great authority. Wow, that is an amazing thing. So that was the first thing. And then he said, I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. Amazing, amazing, amazing what is actually taking place here. And so we realize the Antichrist willingly seeks for power. He willingly seeks for fame. He willingly seeks for wealth. He willingly seeks for possessions. And he willingly does all of these things, and pleasure, and whatever else is self-fulfillment. He willingly seeks that for himself, and those things are happening. And so he makes that alliance with Satan, and he begins to govern the world with authority, with the ability to influence people in a way that normal people would not be able to influence. He's sharp. He's very, very intelligent, very much full of wisdom of the world, not the wisdom of God, but he's full of the wisdom of the world, and he is able to bring things together in such a way that people are overwhelmed by who he is, by his greatness, by his ability to pull this stuff together. But he comes in with finally a dictatorial rule, and with great command and with great tremendous influence. And then we realize the second thing that talks about, he's going to have a wound that comes to him that's going to be deadly wound. And it says that he is going to be healed from the deadly wound by the false prophet. In Zechariah 11:17, this is what it says. This is, quote, woe to the worthless shepherd, talking about the Antichrist, who leaves the flock. A sword shall be against his arm and against his right eye. His arm shall be completely withered, and his right eye shall be totally blinded. He will be wounded in an assassination attempt, or else a tragic or terrible accident of some sort, probably an assassination attempt, and he will be wounded permanently. He'll have a patch on his eye, apparently, and will have a withered arm. And so and the amazing thing is that the false prophet comes in, and he's able, with his miraculous powers, he's able to come in and bring healing and bring this guy back to life, because he's got basically a death sentence upon him, but he brings him back to where he's healed in that situation. And so we see a tremendous work actually that's taking place here that is happening. And I want to just encourage us. Sometimes we see great people that are a miracle or something. We begin to say, well, I really begin to get influenced by that person or by that miracle worker or by that miracle that just took place or whatever it is. We begin to chase miracles. People do that all the time. The church is full of people that search out for miracles. And what we need to realize is Satan also can produce great miracles. We need to realize that. And so don't follow miracles. Don't follow people that are doing miracles. Follow Christ. And we can be grateful for miracles, but let's follow Christ. Let's not get tied off into foolishly focuses, thinking that that's got to be of God, because it may not be of God in any way whatsoever. We don't know. I mean, you can tell, but we need to be careful about those kind of things, about those situations. And so, back to Revelation 13 and verse 4, then it says, they worshiped the dragon then who gave authority to the beast. They worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Can you imagine as they see these things happening, as they see the worship of this guy, they see his mortally wounded, basically talking about a death sentence, and then he's healed from that mortal wound, and then they see his power and his authority and all the things that come with him and the greatness of his personality. They're overwhelmed. The world is basically overwhelmed with who he is. And it's an amazing thing. And they say, who is like the beast? Can you imagine the worship that this would produce towards the Antichrist? A desire to worship him, a desire to say, wow, there's no one like him. Who's able to make war against him? And so we look at that and we think, wow, this is an amazing thing. And then it says he was given, though, a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months, 3.5 years. And so the Antichrist is going to be the one that rules as the final government upon earth. And he will have that authority as a world ruler. And so he'll be, all these things are going to be happening with him. And then we have to look at how does he secure government. And so as we look back from verses 4 to 8, he says they worshipped him. Then verse 5, he says he was given a mouth speaking great things, blasphemies. He was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. And it was granted to him to make war with the saints, to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation, and all who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. So we look at here, and there's 9 characteristics here that are laid out in this passage of Scripture that cause him to become secure in his leadership. And the first one, he secures power by giving freedom to people to become immoral, to become focused upon self-focuses. And so they have that desire. They've been held back from all that because of people that have loving God and good godly standards and stuff that have been brought into the world and in different places and stuff. Well, when the saints are gone, guess what takes place? There's a freedom that the world has always wanted to be involved in, and they're going to find themselves in that position of freedom. So that's the very first thing that's going to bring in freedom to be able to do what they want, and they're going to worship the devil. In 2 Timothy 3:1-5, if you want to turn to 2 Timothy 3:1-5, we recognize just the things that are taking place in our world in a normal situation. Now, this is after the focus of the world, after the church is raptured, where the Holy Spirit is dwelling within the people of the body of Christ. But after these things, it's before this happens. Now, this is where we are today. Listen to what it says. But know this, verse 1, that in the last days, perilous times will come. And of course, perilous times, we're talking about harsh times, savage times, dangerous times, painful times, grievous times, times of terrible unrest. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And of course, in our time, having a form of godliness but denying its power, from such people turn away. We realize that right now we are in that position ourselves within the world today. What's it going to be like when the Antichrist comes on the scene and the saints are gone, and they're given that ultimatum: either worship me, bow down to me, make the loyalty to the country the first focus of your life, or else die. You won't be able to buy, you won't be able to sell, you may be starving to death, or you may be just killed by the sword, or however it comes together, beheaded, whatever. And so what's going to happen? And this is what it's really basically telling us here, that when we are gone, the church is gone, the Antichrist rules, they're going to have freedoms that's going to come together, and it's going to be, and we look at that and we say, that's terrible. That's a horrible looking thing that we're looking at even right now. Well, guess what? When we're gone, when the Holy Spirit is gone, when taken out, it's going to be a terrible, unbelievable time of freedom to do what you want to do to a great extent. And then the second thing, he secures power by his personal abilities and appeal. And remember, he is powerful in his personal abilities. And he comes in the first 3.5 years very intellectual, full of knowledge, full of insight, full of charisma, a person that is a likable kind of a person, and those things. But he comes on the scene with answers to the needs that are happening upon this earth. And he makes a compact with Israel, going to build their temple, and he promises them peace and security, and all of that stuff is going to happen, and Israel is going to swallow it up and say, yes, this is our Messiah. And that, of course, in the 3.5 year mark, when they're demanded to worship and they desecrate the temple and they're told to flee, they understand it quick immediately. At least those that understand will flee and run for their life, and God will supernaturally intervene. So he secures power by his own natural ability, by his intelligence, by his charisma, by all the giftings, whatever, and his knowledge, all those things. He is going to secure a lot of power by that. In Daniel 8, if you want to turn back over to Daniel 8 for just a minute, I should have told you to hang on to Daniel. But we have Daniel 8:23, and this is talking about Antiochus Epiphanes, but Antiochus Epiphanes is an exact duplicate. He is an example of who the Antichrist is, and this is really speaking about him, but this is also speaking about the Antichrist. And it says, verse 23, and in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise, having fierce features. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. It'll be by satanic power. He shall destroy fearfully. He shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy or crush the mighty and also the holy people. And so all of those things are going to be taking place. And by the way, verse 25 it just says, through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule. He shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes, or he opposes the Lord, but he shall be broken without human means. And of course, Antiochus Epiphanes was. And so will the Antichrist be, broken without human means. And so we see this duplication, basically, of what the Antichrist is going to be like. The third thing, that he secures power through his military and economic strength. And so if you want to turn to Daniel 7 again, did you take your finger out of Daniel? Okay, verse 8, it says here, I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little horn. The little horn was rising up, as like Antiochus Epiphanes was talking about, the little horn that rose up in the midst of them also, the other nations, to a place of prominence and power. The Antichrist does the same thing. He comes out from among them, among the nations, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots, and there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. And so we see the Antichrist entering in the scene. In the beginning again, he comes in conquering, and he conquers 3 nations. And he completely absorbs those nations into his own, under his own authority. And then the 7 other nations, we're talking about 10 nations total, but the other 7 nations come in willingly under his power peacefully because they see who he is. And then, of course, that builds a tremendous power unit that he has. He will be powerful. His government is going to be powerful. He's going to be so powerful that the scriptures describe him as the as a beast that is the head of 10 nations. And so he rules over those 10 nations. And then there's some nations, obviously, that he's not going to rule over, but those 10 nations are federated together from the European area with their great wealth, with their military strength. All of that is combined, and of course, as the false prophet comes on the scene, which I believe is the Catholic Church, powerfully wealthy, the Pope. All of those things are coming on. We'll look at that in the future yet. But as we see those things taking place, the wealth is unbelievable. His authority is unbelievable. And so they can say, who can overcome this guy? You know, he's just so powerful. And so he rules over some of the nations that are in the Middle East, some of the nations, not all of them, of the Middle East. And of course, we realize another thing that happens is in the Ezekiel 38 war and 39, when Russia comes in, Turkey comes in, Iran is involved in that war, and some other little ones. And so those basic 3 are involved in that war. Russia gets basically almost like demolished. But we realize that when the Antichrist comes back in, Russia will be one of the nations that is risen up with him in that 10-nation confederation. So we realize that. Revelations 13:5, come back to Revelations 13:5, and then it says, he was given a mouth speaking great things, blasphemies. He was given authority to continue for 42 months. And then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. And so we see again Antichrist securing his power through speech, through persuasion, through blasphemy of God, and he's going to speak great things. And again, as he comes in the beginning, he comes in with a presentation of hope, with a presentation of answers to the needs that are out there that are so riddling the entire world. All the nations of the world are being riddled with all these things, whether it's economic stuff, whether it's environmental problems, or whether it's just simply military focuses. And so he comes in and takes over. And he comes in with all this strong military focus. And turn over to 2 Thessalonians, if you would. 2 Thessalonians 2 and verses 9 to 12. He says, the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders. Wow. Again, don't put your don't put your faith and your focus on miracles. Put your faith on the one that does the miracles, that works miracles, but not on the miracles, not on the person that's working the miracles. None of that. Our focus needs to be up on the Lord. So he is Satan is able with a false prophet to do powerful signs and wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, and that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion. He'll give them what they want, that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth but had pleasure in unrighteousness. And so Satan's empowerment of the Antichrist causes him to be able to do signs, wonders, lying wonders, the false prophet coming on the scene. All of these things are going to come together. So again, do not focus and put your faith in people that do miracles and think that all miracles are from God. They're not. We can be grateful for the things that God does do. He is a miracle working God. He's a healing God. He's a God that cares about his people, cares about people, period. Wonderful blessing. But put your faith in the Lord, not in the focuses that man can produce sometimes themselves. So, so the Antichrist again secures power through speech, and then he also secures power for the first 3.5 years by offering of peace and prosperity, and he promises to build the temple. He deceives the nation of Israel at the beginning, and they acclaim him to be their Messiah. All of these things happening. But the next thing that he does, he secures power through atheism and through humanism. Do we see any of that happening within our nation today, within the world? There's lots of it all over the place. But they living and proclaiming what man wants to hear. And that's what we find, is living and claiming what man wants to hear. And that's what the Antichrist is absolutely going to be doing. And people will gladly follow him. Whenever you have tantalizing focuses that are saying, I would like to do this, or I would like to do that. Oh, you can do that. You can have that. It's a gift, it's a free thing, go for it. Well, look at what we're finding out. We come to a place to where we become a nation that expects everything to come to me because I deserve it, because I have that mentality that the nation owes me, or you owe me, or whatever owes me. The society owes me something. Well, that's not the way that's the way it's going to be during the Antichrist also. But giving what they want to hear. And then, of course, his whole focus is the focus of blaspheming the name of God. He hates God. And then he's going to secure power through religious persecution. He says it was granted to him in verse 7 of Revelation 13 to make war with the saints and to overcome them. I thought the saints were going to overcome everything. Aren't we overcomers? We're going to find out. The Antichrist comes on the scene. Those that refuse to take the mark of the beast, those that refuse to give their allegiance, and they actually come to that place of repentance, giving their lives to Jesus Christ, they're gonna probably be killed. Most of them will be killed for what they've done. Some of them may be able to escape. Most of them will be killed. But also the Jews themselves, hated, will be murdered and killed. A mass of them will be, except the ones that flee to the Rock City of Petra, the 144,000, and whatever God does spare and save. And so we see his power being expended, and the people that deny or do not deny are people that are willing to follow the Antichrist. And of course, they're going to get what they think they're going to want. But the ones that refuse to follow the Antichrist are going to be in opposition to the Antichrist. And so what we see in that opposition, it says in verse number 8 and 9 and 10, it says, all who dwell on the earth will worship this Antichrist, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So it's the ones that do not know Christ. It's the ones that refuse to know Christ. They're the ones that are going to be worshiping the Antichrist, and they're going to find out that the ones that refuse to worship Christ will become a person that becomes an adversary to the Antichrist. And it's not because they're not going to be able to pick up weaponry and start shooting the Antichrist or start shooting the people and think they got. No, that's what it's saying here. He says that he who leads into captivity is going to go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. And here is the patience and the faith of the saints. They're going to be putting their confidence in the Lord. They're not going to be putting their confidence in the fact that they have some kind of a physical ability to defend themselves. They're not going to be wearing a gun and thinking, I can control everything. I can, no, it's not going to happen that way whatsoever. They're going to put their confidence in the Lord. They're going to probably, the majority, the millions of them are going to be killed, and they're going to be in the presence of the Lord immediately. And so what we're seeing is that God knows those that are his. And it tells us if we have committed our lives to Jesus Christ, we have nothing to worry about in that sense. But we have time here while we're here, which could be a very, very short time, to give a witness for the Lord, to be an ambassador for Jesus Christ, to fulfill the commission that we are here to be fulfilling, and to be the witness that God has created us to be, and to make disciples. Go and make disciples. And so all of these things are our privileges, recognizing that those that are going through the tribulation are going to be basically massacred, but the testimony that they leave is that they have found faith in Jesus Christ. They're bold in their focuses. They're maybe hiding for their life or whatever, but there's a radical difference between their life and the life of those that have committed their life to the Antichrist. And we need to have that same mentality here. Our life needs to shine for the glory of God. And it needs to be full of love, full of joy, full of compassion, full of peace, full of the character of Christ, to where the world looks at that and they say, yeah, that's a lot different. In the Antichrist situation, it's going to be, those that are serving the Antichrist are going to look at the Christian and they're going to say, wow, let's kill them. They're different. We need to be known for being different. We need to be known because of our love for each other, our love for God, and our love for people, even our enemies. And what God is trying to tell us is we have an opportunity here. When things are going to come to pass there, we're not going to be here. We're not going to be there, hopefully, none of us that are Christian people. But we're going to find ourselves in a position now to where we need to be like them, steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that all of our labor is not in vain in the Lord. And so be encouraged as we look and see what is taking place as we go through this book of Revelation and other books. We need to be encouraged that God is in that control position. It's not about us, it's about Him, it's about His kingdom. It's not about us and our little kingdom down here, our security, our safety, our comfort, whatever it might happen to be. Let's remember, there's a great contrast between those that are going to choose to follow God during the tribulation time. Great contrast, and they will be killed for it. They become martyrs, most of them. And there needs to be a great contrast here while we're living here, to where we are serving God with all of our heart. We're busy about His business. We know our time is very, very short. And so there needs to be a great contrast between those that are living for the flesh and for the world and for whatever they want, and for those that are living for the glory of God. So I want to thank God today for every one of you that are here today, that have given your lives to the Lord. Let's be the witnesses. Let's be the light and the salt that has a powerful effect upon those around us as we live it out here in this life.